in that position. But what does it take today to be a 21st century worker in the area of diversity and inclusion? I want you to think about that and write down some questions, because we really want to hear from you and really have a dialogue today. Are we ready for that? Okay. In addition, you should have a green and white piece of paper. Agree to disagree, and if you don't, we will get that to you in just a moment, okay? The very first question I want to do is have our distinguished panel introduce themselves and share a little bit about their career path that they have chosen. And we're going to start to my left, Josh.
Yeah, so hey guys, my name's Josh Loebner. I'm Director of Strategy at Design Century, which is an advertising agency here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Prior to that, I worked at a few boutique firms here in Knoxville, and before that, I worked in New York at a couple of larger agencies. I got my master's degree here in the College of Communications, focused on advertising. And diversity and inclusion connects back to me. I'm disabled, left eye's a glass eye, my right eye can't see that great out of, so I'm blind and visually impaired. And I try to champion diversity and inclusion every day.
Thank you, Josh.
I'm the other Josh Cunningham. I'm a second-year master's student in the Comm Studies program here at UT. I've been lucky to have what I'd like to think is an interesting professional background. After my undergrad, I became a wildland firefighter with the U.S. Forest Service in Northern California. And then before coming to grad school, I was one of the lead reporters for the Iditarod sled dog race in Nome, Alaska, as well as a radio DJ. These were all really cool full-time jobs. I was also queer full-time through all these, so I can talk a little bit about that and my relation to diversity in these positions.
Bonjour, I'm French, so I'm a native of France, and I have a bachelor in Chinese and Korean from the University of Bordeaux 3, and then master degree from here, and I'm teaching French. I'm a distinguished lecturer in the foreign language department. I've worked everywhere in England, Spain, France, here in the States. I've been teaching French, Italian, Spanish, and my name is Spanish Arabic. So I have been in situations where I was not too welcomed. That's it.
Hi everyone, I'm Jonja Darden, and I currently serve as the event coordinator for the Office of Undergraduate Admissions here on campus. I graduated from UT in 2011, and right after that I got a job in Sevierville, Tennessee, working as a talent recruiter and also a conference coordinator for college student organizations to come book their entertainment for their campuses.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Frank Cuevas. I'm Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Life and the Executive Director of Campus Housing. I'm originally from Florida. I have 3 degrees from FSU, not the University of Florida. And I've been at the University of Tennessee for about 6.5 years. I worked professionally in multiple institutions, Florida State University, The Ohio State University, and University of Tennessee. Welcome.
Thank you, distinguished panel members. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to come to you because we want, again, audience participation. So you have in your laps, hopefully some of you, hopefully most of you, 2 sheets of paper, one that will say agree to disagree, and if you do not, if you agree, we're going to have you just put your hands up if you don't have a sheet. Is that okay? I'm going to ask you some questions or pose some questions, and if you agree again, if you don't have a paper, put your hands up, and then we will also talk with our distinguished panels about the questions. Number 1, in America, if I earn a college degree, I can get a job and have a career. Agree or disagree? Hold them high so people, okay. Now look around, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, agree versus disagree. Okay, second, today men and women are treated equal in the workplace. Look around, ladies and gentlemen, look around. Okay, look around. Okay, number 3, I feel more comfortable around certain types of people. Agree or disagree? I feel more comfortable around certain types of people. Look around, continue holding them up. Make sure our distinguished panel get a look at this. Are you guys watching?
We're watching.
Okay. Number 4, I make snap judgments about people. Agree or disagree? I make snap judgments about people. Okay. And our last question, I have privileges that others do not have.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much for the audience participation. Again, I'm Alice Worth. I'm going to be your roving moderator.
I'm Annette Houston. I am the other moderator, and I'm the Director of Disability Services here at the university. So, panel, questions for you. Was there anything from the responses from the audience that surprised you?
It's not surprising, and it's a shame that it's not surprising, especially with regards to the women versus men. It's 2016, and you know, it would seem like we're so advanced in some ways within our world, but we still have so far to go when it comes to diversity and inclusion in something so simple as pay equality, compensation equality when it comes to gender, and it's a shame that we're not there yet.
Other comments from our panel?
I mean, I would agree with Josh. I wasn't surprised, and particularly the one also about college degree equal to a career. That's a conversation that's happening now in society, across the country, about the value of the college degree. What does that mean? Will I have a job in the workforce? So I wasn't surprised to see the mixed reaction.
Yeah, me too, because I've been teaching for a long time, and some of my former students, they have a college degree and they're not working where they should be working. I mean, they work at Target and they have a degree. So
I was just gonna say, I found it fascinating that at the end, the questions got a little more sticky, a little more controversial, and the faces that we got from when you were holding them up, you couldn't see everyone's face, but we could, so it was like, that's what we saw. So it's good that we're having this conversation, yes.
So one of the questions that we ask is, I make snap judgments about people. And so can we do that one again?
Agree to disagree? I make snap judgments about people.
Okay. So just with this question, we're all going into the workforce. Let's just assume that we do get that job. We all go into the workforce. How does this affect diversity and inclusion in the workforce? Just that one answer, response.
Well, you know, this is kind of crazy. I make a lot of judgments, snap judgments about people before I meet people. And the reason I say that is a lot of resumes cross my desk at my job. And now, of course, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, there is this unintended bias potentially. Some people who review resumes say that there can be bias associated even with something as simple as the person's name. That not even looking at the resume, some people can just see the name and for whatever reason feel like it's contextually associated with a person of color or another minority. But that said, everybody here is trying to get a job, and this expands well beyond diversity and inclusion. Something Josh and I were talking right before this is that doesn't matter what color you are, doesn't matter what gender preference you are, what disability or ability you have, you need to have a good resume. You need to have a good, strong digital presence. But I will argue that diversity and inclusion does play a role when it comes to being hired.
I teach business and professional communication for the College of Comm, and one of the things I tell my students within the first couple of weeks is that the employer who you are interviewing with is going to pretty much decide whether you are hired or whether your resume is going in the bottom of the trash can within that first minute. Some of that will be about how you present yourselves and things that are within your control. But many of you will be in the position where you will hire people one day, whether you want to or not, and to acknowledge that you make snap judgments about people in everyday life. That carries over to in the future when you are in the position of hiring people. And acknowledging that now is half the battle to having this conversation. So I applaud you for that.
as a teacher, we do a lot of group work in class. How many, are you all seniors, juniors, freshmen? No? What is it, seniors? Okay, combination, okay. So I sit in the classroom, we do a lot of group work, and I please make an effort. I have some students, they really kind of don't want to work with certain minorities, And it's just a matter of fact, you have to know everyone and be nice to everyone and try to know that person. So I see it on campus, I'm not in the classroom all the time.
I would say as far as making snap judgments, when you start a new job, obviously people are wanting to know who you are, about you, especially during the interview process. So I would say when you're going into an interview, they're looking for the perfect fit, the good fit for the office. Why not be the person that stands out, that's not like everyone else in the office, so that you can bring a different perspective, something that's new, something that's fresh. Just be willing to be open to change and new situations so that you can be that voice of reason in the office that they may not have considered before.
I think it's the snap judgment is just really a reality. We live in an instantaneous world. We're always making judgments on the fly because we're seeing media through social media or even our news is just very instant. So the challenge really is to take the time. Pause, reflect, get to know the individual, get to know the environment, to assess that culture, to assess every work environment has a work culture. And so you really need to take a pause for a minute and just sort of reflect on it.
Okay, with that, we'd like to hear from the panel on what your definition of diversity, workplace diversity and inclusion is. And in a perfect world, what does that look like? And how do I know when I'm in a workplace that values diversity?
Well, I think that you really need to look at the organizational values and what the organization itself, the values it espouses. Does it have, I tend to look at missions. Is there a mission statement for an organization? Do they convey a value statement? Is there a real commitment to support diversity initiatives? Is there the level of support and commitment? Is there a level of support and commitment beyond simply saying we're going to do a couple of items throughout the year? I think that the definition of diversity has to be very broad and inclusive. You have to look at beyond race, ethnicity, you have to look at sexual orientation, identity. I think it's if you start narrowing that definition, it can become very problematic.
I would just say everyone has a story, and those stories make up who you are and who you become as a person. So, like I was saying before, take your story, take what you believe into the office setting and share what you feel are your rights and your values and your beliefs, and let those be known. A thing that I looked for when I was looking for my job was mostly, are they practicing what they preach? So in terms of that, yes, we value diversity, we value all these different things. Okay, well, what are you doing to show me that you are doing these things? And asking those questions during your interview process is a huge plus, because if they can give you some answers and you're good with those answers, that's the job for you. If not, you may want to consider some other options.
I think the university is a great place to work because in my department we're very inclusive. We've got people from different sexually orientated. We have people from all over the world. We have minorities. We have different religions represented. So I'm in a pretty good place right now.
I think there's a really big difference. There's a lot of really great mission statements out there that value diversity and use that as a very powerful word. And then if you were to step into the offices, you might not necessarily get that feeling. I believe that a commitment to diversity is something that when you work there, you have to be there to understand. It's very important to have these things written down within employee workbooks, within mission statements, within websites, but a commitment to diversity is a matter of action.
Definitely, and so that action, for example, I'm in the advertising industry. One of our professional organizations has a chapter here in Knoxville, the American Advertising Federation. Well, at an agency that I was at prior to the one I'm at currently, the owners of the company didn't want us to go to the American Advertising Federation meetings because we would fraternize with competitors. The point I'm getting at is it should be relatively easy for you to see if a corporation is diverse or not, but one great way to see about diversity in a corporation is to see what other corporations or professional organizations they're associated with. Again, in the advertising industry, is your agency associated with the 4As, the American Association of Advertising Agencies, or the AAF? Find out if within that professional organization there is diversity and inclusion representatives, and talk with them about this place you want to work at or this business you want to go into, to get more of a perspective on either one corporation's culture or the industry's culture as a whole, and how you can play a role with regards to diversity and inclusion.
Okay, so as we're looking at our panel, you all have been very successful. You all have jobs. So my question to you is, what challenges have you faced, or have you faced any challenges as you've brought your diverse self into the workplace?
People are ho-hum about it, oftentimes in the ad industry. Ad industry has had challenges with diversity from the start. Gray Advertising, which is a global firm, several UT students have gone on to work there, was started by Jews because our industry didn't want to have anything to do with Jewish people. So back in the early 1900s, the Jewish community that was in advertising said, you know what, we're going to start our own agency. And of course, it's multicultural. Gray is multicultural and diverse now, well beyond Jewish people. But challenges I've had, and I still struggle with, is that disability as a minority community is new to the diversity and inclusion discussion. And so oftentimes it's rare that when the topic of D&I is brought up, that diversity is at the table from an editorial and journalistic perspective or from a creative perspective within advertising.
I think there are several positions that I've involved myself in, such as being a firefighter, where you live and work close-knit with a team, where if I had been completely open about who I was and my sexuality, where it would have been very easy for an employer behind closed doors to say, this person doesn't fit. They might not have said out loud, this person doesn't fit because he's gay and that's going to make other people uncomfortable. They would have just said, I don't think that he would have meshed well with the team. Eventually, I was able to bond with my team and earn my place, so to speak. I want to live in a world where I don't have to do that, where I don't want to have to fight the uphill battle because of things that I can't change about myself. I'd like to think better. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some of these places would have hired me outright just to my charm. But I do believe if I had to go back and do those things again, that I probably wouldn't have had the amazing opportunities that I did if I had been upfront and honest about who I was.
Well, at UT, like I said, it's a special place to work, so I did not have any problems. But I did teach high school in rural Tennessee, and it was a bit hard at the beginning with students because that was the first time they had a teacher who had an accent. Some parents also were not very welcoming, and one of my colleagues, and it took time to break the ice and to show that I was like everyone else, even if I had an accent. So that was a good experience. But I would say the difference is between rural and urban, and I think you find that everywhere, where it's people living in big cities are usually used to diversity, and they seek that, actually they thrive on that, and people in rural communities are more closed, and they like to be close-knit, they like to be with their families and not really reaching out, so that was the problem.
My first job out of college, I was actually the youngest person on the team and the youngest person they had ever hired. So that was a very interesting dynamic, and it was a struggle sometimes to work with older people, and I'm sure it was a struggle for them to work with someone younger. So as I mentioned before, bringing that fresh perspective and the new ideas was sometimes a struggle for me because they were how we've always done it. This is the way it's done, and this is the way it's going to work. So just being open to take that challenge was a lot for me, but I succeeded. And then I would also say I was the only person of color on their staff, and I was the first person of color that they had hired as well. So this was a family-owned business out of Sevierville, Tennessee, and you have to make your mark wherever you go, whatever you do. I would just say that At UT, I've been here since February in the Office of Admissions, and it's been a very eye-opening experience for me because we do truly have a diverse staff of all ages, all races, all backgrounds. It is incredible to work with such a unique and welcoming and open staff. So I would encourage you, when you're looking for your career path, make sure that you're choosing a place where you feel welcome.
You know, I think about this question, two instances come to mind. One, I remember being part of a search and being interviewed, and afterwards, a search committee member telling me, you know, you're only here for affirmative action reasons. And responding to how you work through that in the interview process. The formal interview had ended, so you have to work through that. I did. I shared it later with the people who I chose not to work at that place. The second thing relates to the snap judgment we talked about earlier. I actually was in a work environment, and individuals make snap judgments about what you eat, how you should dress, and all of a sudden I represent everyone who looks like me. So,
Frank, can you just share that when we talked, what happened to you when you were interviewing for that one position?
well, you know, I'm certainly sure that I can expand on that story a little bit more. I was actually on an interview, and it was a multi-day interview. I'm Mexican American. My great-grandparents immigrated to the United States. And I was on an interview, and I was in the southwest part of the country, and you know, when you're on a multi-day interview, you're gonna have meals. Any interview, sometimes if you're lucky to have a meal, that's great. If they give you a meal as part of the interview process. So I had a breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I noticed a pattern on day 2. It took me to day 2 to figure this out. That was another issue. But it's a pattern on day 2 that every meal I had eaten, I had gone to a Tex-Mex restaurant.
That's not even the same.
Which is not even...
It's not even the same thing, I'm
Not even
sorry.
the same thing, right? But anyway, it doesn't matter. So they were giving me a choice, and I said, well, we're going to go to this other restaurant. And I said, you know, I actually told my host, I said, I love Mexican food as much as anybody else, but I do eat other things. And, I even went to, you know, one day, that one morning that I said I needed to change, they took me to a drive-through burrito place. Who knows, you could have one. So I had a drive-through burrito, breakfast burrito, on my way to the interview, when I would much rather have a cup of coffee and a bagel. So it was very interesting because I had to spend some time with my host educating them about the meals that I was going to have and how we needed to, I was okay having something else other than, you know, Tex-Mex.
I thought that was an interesting story. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to open some questions up to you right now in the audience. Who has the first question they would like to ask our distinguished panel?
I don't really need this.
Oh,
But
yeah.
okay. Okay. How would you say that a person of majority in the workplace, such as like a straight white male, brings diversity?
I think they bring diversity by supporting those people who are minorities to be understanding and recognize that, yes, they are majority, and that, at least for the advertising industry, more people with minorities need to play a role at higher levels. So more often than not, that person who is in the majority, the white male, is in a higher up position. And so that person, while, of course, performance and caliber and experience of the person that is submitting their resume needs to be considered. Of course, diversity should, I would argue, play a role in consideration of expanding hiring of minorities, not only at the entry level, but as well, more importantly and significantly, at the upper management level.
I would agree, they bring the opportunity to be an ally.
Yeah, sometimes it's good also they step down a little bit and listen. That'd be good.
I would say, like I was saying before, you never know their story. So their best friend could have been someone of color, someone who is just completely different from them. So having that aspect in their life could definitely impact who they are as a person in the workplace. So those interactions are so important, even as a child, because they carry over into your career.
I would agree with everything's been accurate, being the ally, being supportive, understanding, and bringing their perspective.
And I would like to add that being a diverse person, we are all diverse because it runs across so many different areas, or encompasses so many areas, from one's social economics, religion, one's sexual identity. It's just, so we're all in a way diverse. That's what makes us unique. Second question.
I know we have a burning question here in the audience.
Yeah, I have another one actually.
Okay, great.
Great.
Okay, so how would you, I guess, suggest if you have a disability or a different sexual orientation or a different religion, if a coworker is unfamiliar with such, how would you want them to get to know without asking, and it seems offensive, but also they don't want to be ignorant? What's a good way to have that conversation?
I want to say that no person should ever feel like they have to be the representation of what makes them diverse. No one should be required to be the encyclopedia on what it means to be transgendered or what it means to be black. So it really is up to that person. Do I want to share information with this person? Do I really feel like it's appropriate? And if so, it's up to them. It's really great that many people are curious, but when we do have questions and we are unfamiliar, it's good to seek out information, but not to require people of the diversity issue that we're interested in to be our resource of information. That's not their job.
Piggybacking on that, have any of you, being many different types of people on the panel, received a negative remark or a stereotypical remark that you felt an ouch moment, and let me use this time to educate?
Woo! So, yes, that has happened to me. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with the show Martin, but I don't think I remind anyone in this room, probably not of Shanae. Yeah, that has happened before. So, being compared to Shanae by not only
Can
a
you
coworker.
just share what Shanae is?
Shanae.
Who she is?
Okay, so Martin is a show. It's a pretty much predominantly African American TV comedy series, I would say, that was in the 90s, I believe, 80s, 90s. And Shanae was actually a character that was played by, is it Martin Lawrence?
Yes.
Yes. So he dressed up as a woman to portray an African American female who had long fingernails, long hair, usually big weaves, and she did a lot of snapping and rolling up the neck. And I was in a meeting and actually said a response to something that I just kind of disagreed with. And he said that I acted very Shanae-ish. And everyone in the room just kind of stopped. And the way I handled it was, I didn't say anything. I didn't respond in that moment at all. I let the meeting continue, moved on, let it pass, and after everyone left, I stayed in the room. And I looked at my boss in my face and I asked him, how did I act like Shanae? And why did he feel the need to say that I acted like Shanae? And he couldn't tell me. He said, it's just something that came. And so knowing when to snap back and knowing when to just take things and kind of think about them, pause for a second. And I would say it has to do with the location that you're in as well, because when you think about the people that they've surrounded themselves with their whole lives, they may not know, more about your culture and who you are as a person. And there are times where I probably do act a certain way or a specific way that he may not be familiar with. And that's part of being open, that's part of being understanding, that's part of just being willing to accept people for who they are without judgment.
Yeah, and one point I'd add to that is within the disability community, oftentimes when there are able-bodied people alongside or near people with disabilities, especially and in particular people in wheelchairs, people who are able-bodied, if there's a doorway or something near that, they tend to always immediately want to help. Well, the disabled person may not be seeking that help. They may be independent enough to open that door or pick up their bag or their books or what have you. So the one thing to say when, as an able-bodied person, you may connect with somebody with a disability, don't immediately kind of snap judgment. Don't immediately ask if they need help. Let them be the ones to ask if they do need it, because oftentimes they don't actually. But there's always maybe that bit of trepidation. So what I would say is just don't ask until they ask for it.
In my experience, coming out to people somehow removes a barrier, a filtration system for questions about sex, and that's icky. It's really icky. So if you ever feel like asking someone about anything related to sex and physicality and intimacy and romance, really ask yourselves, who am I asking this to, and would I ask this to anybody else? Icky is really the best word I can come up with.
We have another question.
Hello. Great talk so far. My question is focused more to Josh Loebner or anyone else that has been a part of a hiring process and deciding on who to hire. Have you ever faced a position where you had to choose diversity over experience or experience over diversity? And if you have had a situation like that, how did you reconcile your decision?
So experience always trumps, in my opinion, experience over anything. So I'm blind visually, but I also try to be blind from I guess, an intellect standpoint when it comes to looking at that experience. And the one thing to say, just to everyone here, again, recognizing that this is most of your college students looking to gain work and some type of experience. Take your resume beyond just the printed page and ensure that you have some type of digital presence beyond just a printout that's a couple of pages. Try to have a blog. Try to have video. Try to have internships. Work for nonprofits. Do things that give you a breadth and scope to share who you are beyond your level of experience here at the college. But again, definitely experience wins the day. And even if you have limited experience, again, the snap judgment that I have in no way is associated with perceived diversity in a name. It's with typos, it's with misspellings, it's with to whom it may concern in the letter that's sent to me. It's with lack of experience in going to my agency's website and finding a little bit about what would interest you in working here. I think everyone here needs to be a bit more focused on where they want to work and why they want to work there, and make sure that you tailor yourself to that individual who's in the job hiring process or to that organization. That's a major challenge that I see, and honestly, like dozens of resumes get rejected relatively immediately because of simple typo mistakes or because of, I am in an industry that praises good graphics and good graphic design. You don't have to be a graphic designer, though, to have a well-designed resume that stands out.
Are there other tips or strategies that you could share with our audience that will help them prepare for the world of work?
I don't put any naked pictures on Facebook.
Address that, speak to that.
Yeah, but I have a Facebook, I have a few students on my Facebook, the ones are really special. And I think it's really kind of tacky to just have a picture of yourself, just in bathing suit or things like that. It's, I don't find it very, just don't do it. It's not very professional.
I think the social media, and really think about how you portray yourself in that environment. I think Josh was talking a little about put people on, that's great, there are many things you can do to enhance your skill set. But also think about how you're portraying yourself and how a potential employer might make snap judgments about how you portray yourself in the social media world. So just be thoughtful of that. Step back and think about how you present yourself there.
Just one other thing to say about that is you can embrace your diversity here at the college level, and you can take actions here. If you can't get an internship in the real world, or maybe you have, you can also look to student level professional organizations like Andre here is the president of the ad club here on campus. So how can you build into and tap into your diversity network through scholarships, say again from the professional organizations like AAF or the 4As or whatever other college of communications and information professional organizations you may connect with. Engage those people before you go into the job world, and engage your peers within the student level organizations to tap into them.
I just have a question. We're going back to hiring. You mentioned, and I'm going to go with Frank, we talk about the word affirmative action. We've had a question about how do you resolve experience over diversity. I think that I'd like for you to speak to how our search is conducted. I mean, do we just throw out credentials and say, here are the qualified people and then here are the diverse people? Can you just give us an idea of what corporations do as it relates to hiring?
Well, I can tell you, at least from my experience, I think if any industry, if you truly value diversity, you're going to do what you can to build a strong pool of qualified, diverse pool of applicants. So you need to be very intentional on recruiting and continue to build those relationships, whether it might be relationships with agents or professional organizations, it might be calling individuals you might know who might tap and be able to network you with individuals. So I think it starts there. And then when you bring it into a search, it talks, you go through that process of, all you have is a resume to judge an individual on. And you look at what your skill sets are and looking at the qualifications that you so desire. And you build it from that point. But I think it really starts on the recruiting end, and that's where we really need to invest a lot of time. I'm being very intentional on building a qualified, as diverse pool as possible, and utilize networks, utilize associations, certainly part of networks, to really cast that net, cast the wide net as possible, because that's how you're going to really help diversify your work environment. And then once hopefully your own team of individuals are help selling you that institution or organization or what have you.
So I have another question for you. So are you an assistant vice chancellor for student life because you're Mexican American?
I'm assistant vice chancellor for student life to represent everybody.
But is it because you're Mexican American? So I'm just saying, I'm the hiring person, so I'm just asking,
I'm assistant vice chancellor because I have the skills and qualifications and the educational training to have the job. So as I told the individual who said, I'm only there for affirmative action reasons, I took that opportunity later on to have an educational moment with them about why I felt while I was there, why the skill set and qualifications, and we had a conversation. I later went to that individual's boss and had a different conversation, very similar, but I said, I'm no longer going to be part of this process because I don't think your organization values being very inclusive and diverse and supportive. So that turned into a whole different conversation afterwards. But I think that I have the role because I have the skill set. And I go into that saying, I have the opportunity because I have the skill set. And I recognize it's a privilege I have because I have educational training in the background.
Okay.
We have a question from our audience.
If you work for a company that you find yourself in that doesn't value diversity, how can you bring that up in an environment where you think you might have a lot of pushback? Are there ways that you can do that?
So most organizations typically have annual reviews with individual employees or biannual reviews. That's an opportunity where you can bring it up individually. But if it can't wait until that time, definitely if your organization isn't accepting of diversity, it's something to bring up immediately. Hopefully, your organization does have a human resources department that you can tap into, but if not, and mine does not, we're a company of maybe 50 people, so we don't have an HR staff, so to speak. Definitely go to your direct report and speak with them. I think ultimately, if issues aren't resolved, then you go outside of your company to either a professional organization that's connected to your company, or you go to the media, or definitely put that resume together and start looking for another position at another company.
I'll add some of the organizations I work for. I think if I would have gone through classic channels and would have reported it to a higher up, or would have written it down on a piece of paper, that would have fallen on deaf ears and had ended up in a filing cabinet. One of the best ways, if you want to be heard, is to find other people that are speaking the same message as you. Coalesce around other people who share some of the same goals as you, who recognize some of the same problems, and work from the bottom up if you have to.
I have a question. My name's Andrea. Thank you guys for coming to speak today. My question is, as a person of minority, when someone talks down to you because of your minority, how do you like assert yourself and like let them know that you're like as smart and like capable of something?
You have to take a moment. You have to take a moment, and sometimes it does take walking away and coming back to address the issue, as you did in your case as well. I would say, and especially if you are someone who is younger in the office, getting that respect as well is sometimes hard. So you do have to sometimes maybe even write things down before you go into a meeting with your boss, or I was unfortunate, I didn't have an HR department either, so I was dealing strictly with my boss, who actually made most of the statements that were made. So I would say I would come up with a list, or I would jot down in my notes during meetings, this happened, and I would address them later. But if you don't say anything, then they'll never know, because most of the time they don't know that they're upsetting you or they've said anything offensive. But I would always say, if there's anything that's concerning you on the job, always speak up about it or document it in some way, so when you do take the time to work on your resume to look for other jobs, you can say, this is why.
Yeah, but I think we need to change mentalities. I mean, if you have to, each time you have to move from that job, the atmosphere is not improving. So, especially I'm thinking about big organizations like hospitals and things like that, where you have, you can have an act of racism, and I think it's important to address that instead of just walking away from the job.
I was there for 4 years, and I
Yes.
agree with that.
Yeah.
You try to stick it out as long as you can, and then when you see that there's not change, I totally agree, then it's time.
So list the changes. I am not happy in this position. I need to know, these people need to know, when do I walk away? So what are those criterias, or just share with the group here, they need to seek other, and I'm gonna ask my gender question, but what are some criterias or example, I need to move on?
When your voice is no longer being heard.
Okay.
I had some different experiences when I was a firefighter, and it was a very sexist and homophobic and big in the machismo type of area. Every day I stuck it out felt like a little bit of retribution. Every day that I was there and I was working as hard as anybody else, I was just as strong as any of the guys on my team. I was more than capable and a lot smarter than a lot of them. That felt really good, and that kept me fueled. I'm not saying that you should go into a job to every day feel a little bit of sweet revenge, don't get me wrong. But I felt something when I left there. I did their job, I did better than them in a lot of ways. Was I miserable for a lot of it and frustrated with them for a lot of it? Yes. But I would not have traded that for any amount of comfort I might have found in another job.
Okay, let's get back to agree to disagree. You held up, today men and women are treated equal in the workplace. Let's see that again. Today men and women are treated equal in the workplace. Okay, you guys get that? Okay. The question is, how has gender impacted your work situation, if at all?
Well, I think in the ad industry, it's definitely at the forefront of conversations. There's an organization called the 3%, which represents that only 3% of women are at the creative director or management level within our industry, and that is atrocious. It's just atrocious. And so our industry is dealing with it right now. It's a major issue. But the advertising industry is not at the forefront of diversity and inclusion. It's conversations like this, though, that help out to recognize that there are students that want to enter the working world and have diversity on top of their mind, to bring it into the conversations at the boardrooms and at the creative tables.
Whenever I'm engaging in a new experience, I ask myself, did I get here from what combination of things? Was it privilege? Was it luck? Or was it my talent? And I ask myself, which outweighs the most? And more often than not, privilege rises to the top depending on the situation. Acknowledging that, and then acknowledging that one of the biggest and most obvious factors I can attribute it to is the fact that I'm male, provides me with the opportunity to ask, what can I do as a colleague to make sure that the women in my organization are having the same opportunities that I have? And then ask myself an even bigger question. When I have the opportunity to hire and choose what work people do, how will I make sure that skills and even luck outweighs privilege when it comes to gender in the workplace when I am a hiring manager?
Excellent. Can you just expound a little bit more on privilege, what that means to you?
Sure. I've got to do a lot of incredible things, and it would be really easy to go through life and to say, wow, I am so talented and I work really hard for all that I've gotten. Go me. I think that is a very blind way to go through life. You will be blind to who you really are, and everyone else is going to see the truth.
Sounds like Trump to me.
It would be very easy to attribute it to that. I don't feel the need to necessarily feel guilt for the fact that my privilege has gotten me places. I acknowledge that it exists, but I do feel an obligation to try to make it a world where that isn't the case. I'm very grateful for every opportunity I had, but it would be very wrong, and it would separate me from other people and their experiences for me to believe that everyone can pull themselves up by the bootstraps that they were given and get to the same place I have. It's not true.
Well, as a woman, I mean, you always, every day you face discrimination. Not at work, because I'm in a very good place, but I'm in the hospitals. I've been in the hospitals several times. I was very sick, and some doctors call me little girl, girlfriend, sweetie. So you don't really feel good about those names. They don't know you when they call you those belittling names, and how do you respond to that? Who has been called sweetie here? Do you like it? So what do you say?
I don't think it comes from a place of hate, such as other things you would call.
Well, but do you like it, or
Yeah, I don't mind it.
you don't mind it? Well, I do mind.
I guess context plays a large part of that. Like here, the cafeteria here, it's just kind of known that all the especially the ladies that all work at the, passing out the food or swiping your card, it's just a
Yeah.
well-known fact that they're gonna ask you your days and say, see you later, sweetie, or see you later, baby, or thanks for coming. Like,
Okay.
What about girl as when you have a woman that's over 40, they're calling you girl?
Yes, exactly. Girlfriend.
I mean, I think like if you're in the hospital sick and they're like, oh, sweetie, do you not feel good? That's really demeaning, and it's like saying that your pain isn't like really that big of a deal. You're just like kind of having like an emotional day or something. Or if you're like in the workplace and you're like upset with something and they're like, I know how you feel, darling. Like it's all just very to like knock you down a peg and to make
I
you
just don't like those nicknames. I really don't.
Here's another response.
Yeah, I think for me, I notice it a lot, especially if I'm in the company of males. Like if I go out to dinner with my boyfriend and the waiter calls him sir and me sweetie, why is he sir and I'm sweetie? Like we're the same age. I don't. So that's situations where it does
So
feel
how do you think we can
intimidating.
change that? What do you
I don't
say when
know.
that happens?
I don't say anything when it happens. I don't.
Okay.
I think the sweetie thing and the pet names, it really depends because in some cases it can be in some cases, it can be empowering. If Ms. Alice calls me sweetie or girlfriend, it's probably gonna be super empowering, like, you go girlfriend. And there's a level of respect there. But if it comes from other people you don't know, people who haven't earned that, it can be demeaning. But I worked with a gentleman who was around my age, and he was very much a Southern gentleman, and he would ask, before we got to know each other, I tend to call people sweetie. Does that bother you? Does that offend you? I will not. And I said, no, it makes us feel like we're connected, we're a team, call me sweetie. So it depends on the respect level. But Alice can call me sweetie.
Yeah, if you have a male boss and he calls you sweetie, no, that is uncalled for, and that starts to lean towards sexual harassment, if not already being in the land of sexual harassment. So that should never happen in the workplace, I would argue, from a male superior saying that to a woman, or vice versa, a woman saying it to a male. It can cause issues.
Let's stay on that area and that issue with harassment. I'm not asking you if you've ever been harassed or whatever, but what are some of the situations to help these young people know what harassment is in the workplace?
I think harassment is anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, period. Regardless of your background. If you're feeling uncomfortable about something, ethically or personally, it's your opportunity to speak up. And, there have been some instances where maybe we don't feel like we can speak up right at that moment, but find a safe place and safe time and safe environment where maybe it's not you and that one individual, but maybe there's an opportunity to bring multiple people into the mix in the conversation so that it can be a bit more open and secure.
Yeah, you can have colleagues crying, and if they insist about your private life, I think it's harassment as well. And you need to know when to stop and get the cues. If people don't want to answer questions, just don't go there and ask every day about things that are private. This is just, to me, it's harassment.
I just want to go back to a question prior to that. Gender and men and women in the workplace. What is it going to take for equal work, equal pay for men and women? What is that going to, what's going to have to happen? And sometimes I know it begins in that negotiation process. After you get your job or whatever, men and women can tend to negotiate their worth, their salary or whatever. According to statistics, women are not the strongest men in that area. So what can be done? What do you think is going to have to happen? What solution? I'm going to ask the men and women in the audience, what needs to happen? Equal pay for equal work.
Vote. Vote, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, I was informed that because I am an African American woman, and this is the industry that I want to go into, and for so long it's been labeled a billionaire boys club, where everyone on the top level looks to appear in a certain image. In the advertising industry, they're trying to bring about, I know how to say it. They're trying to bring about more diversity. I have been taught that it's better to negotiate in my position, being an African American woman coming into this industry, or being a minority coming into this industry, that my numbers are needed. Those diverse numbers are needed within the industry. So to negotiate my price salary, if I do believe that my experience meets up to the salary that I'm asking for. So essentially, going back to what Ms. Alice said, when it comes to whatever, if you feel that you bring certain qualities to the table, then you need to negotiate up. For me personally, like if once I work, it can be from, I've worked in the food service industry, I've worked in retail. If I work at a certain price limit, like if I get paid $12 at my previous job, I'm going to negotiate up. Simple as that. And then it becomes into the conversation of the industry that I'm going into. I know that my diversity plays a factor within the hiring process. To a certain degree, it plays a factor into the hiring process. So that's my experience. I know everything looks different for everyone across the board. And then going back to, I don't know if it was Rebecca or Timmy, going back to the question about how do you show diversity if you are a part of the majority? We're all diverse people. A lot of people like to sum diversity up into black and white. It can be that simple if you want to take it to that minimalistic point. But diversity stems to a lot of effects, because I could be in the hiring process with Tristany, who is also African American woman, and they're gonna look at our experience. So essentially, it's what you bring to the table. But if you know you have those qualities in whatever respect that it is, whether it be your race or whether it be your education, where you get your degree or what experience you've had, talk that up and negotiate up.
And when you bring things to the table, bring it to the table. Don't be timid. Don't be timid, but do your homework. If you do want to negotiate, know the annual revenue of the company that you want to work at, how many employees they have, and where you would fit within that employee mix, so that you're not demanding something that's out of line, but rather you have parameters, within what you know, so that you can say, here's what I want, here's why I want it, here's actually why I deserve it.
Can I say something? I think at the national level, if we have affordable child care, women would stay in the workforce as well. A lot of women drop out of their work to raise their kids for 3-5 years, and we're missing those women in the workforce. In France, we do have free child care, so it's very rare to see a woman staying home. I've never seen anyone in France not working. And here it's very, very common to see women just taking 5 years, stepping out, and just staying home to raise the kids. So I think making free schooling at age 3 or even daycare, that would be a big boost for women.
I have a question. We've said that diversity and inclusion includes more than race and gender. But when we measure diversity, what are we measuring? When we're going to corporations and we're saying you're not very diverse, what are we actually measuring? The fact that I'm from Oklahoma doesn't show up on anything. But that's diversity, because we've got red dirt. It doesn't show up. So what's being measured by the corporation?
Well, I can tell you, the people with disabilities are not being measured. From an advertising standpoint, there have been no studies. When it comes to minorities and inclusion of minorities, there's been no corporation, no agency, no professional organization to do any statistically valid studies of inclusion of people with disabilities in advertising. Their brand affinity, their brand likes, their brand dislikes. And so, just from that standpoint, people with disabilities are not being measured within the advertising industry like they should be, comparatively to other minorities.
It is the obvious pieces of diversity that are being measured more often than not. But in many cases, it is getting better. It is a slow and grinding process, though. A lot of the aspects of hidden diversity where shame is attached, such as not being heterosexual, such as not being cisgendered, people are becoming more comfortable to declare themselves that within the workplace. And when you identify, you can be counted. And it is getting better, and not nearly quickly enough, and not in time for everyone to benefit from that level of honesty. But hidden diversity is becoming more uncovered the more time goes on.
Yeah, I think the United States is really the leader in diversity if I compare to other countries, especially France. So I think we're in a good place. Of course, we still have to work and open those doors, but
I'd say any experience that you've had that you felt was something that took you outside of your comfort zone and kind of challenged you a little bit, include that somewhere in your cover letter, your resume, so that your future employer knows that this person has had experience just beyond the classroom and organizations that you participated in.
I mean, I would agree with everything that was said here, and I would add that what's measured is typically what the general reporting mechanisms that the federal government might outline for whatever reasons. It tends to be very limited because they have reporting for HR industries that they have to do. But also, to piggyback on what you were saying, is any opportunity to highlight the value you bring, and here's what I bring to your organization. You need to take that opportunity and tell that story, because not everyone knows your story. And tell the story and say, here's the value I'm going to bring, and how that value is adding to the value of the organization. I think that's critical.
Do you have a question?
Yes.
I do. Thank you guys for coming out today. So to kind of flip the script, we've done a lot talking about the company you work for. How do you suggest going about changing maybe like the general consensus for other people? For instance, like how do you deal with something where they'd like to hire diverse, but for instance, people tend to trust men to sell them cars more. They trust female nurses more. They trust a white male executive more. How do you go about changing that part of it where it's not necessarily you or the company you work for that's having a problem with diversity? It's that statistically these kind of things are being shown, or companies you work with, or the general population feels a certain way.
That's where media can play a powerful role, so that movies or television shows or journalists don't just immediately gravitate to that common stereotype of a woman nurse, but that people of diversity can be incorporated in ways maybe that haven't been seen before in the media, so that there is broader inclusion and acceptance and just general awareness that, hey, there are male nurses and they do just as great a job. And to make sure that that character isn't, in and of itself, because they might be new, perceived as something that is truly different, but actually they're just a nurse and that's it. But oftentimes right now media still to an extent does polarize and segment in ways that it shouldn't, but it is changing. Organizations like GLAAD continue to make strides with regards to inclusion of all diversities. So I would argue that that's one way that if you are in the College of Communication and you do play a role within media in whatever capacity, that you ensure that diversity is part of that conversation.
I would add everything you do, everything you partake in is a vote. Whatever businesses you go to, when you pay them money in a way that you are giving them votes and saying what you do is okay. And I don't expect anyone, I wouldn't hold myself accountable to research every single facet of an organization. But if you are aware of certain media outlets, of certain businesses, of certain organizations that do things in a way that don't represent an ideal world that you would want to live in, I would take a stand against it first personally. And then if you have any power to leverage to make other people leverage that too, to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Josh. I boycott myself a few businesses around here, so and educate people, show diversity yourself. I do show movies that are not mainstream in the library, so I educate my students as well from points of diversity. Yeah, read as well.
Having these conversations and having them sooner. I think these kinds of conversations that take us out of our comfort zone a little bit, but still challenge us, and a chance to hear other people's opinions and beliefs, I think that will take us further if we are able to have these sooner, especially in school.
Education. I think it starts with educating and having open dialogues, frequent.
Okay, one of the things that we know is that a lot of corporations have diversity and inclusion programs. And I think I read some research that said about 66% of some of the best companies have diversity and inclusion programs. But I also learned that only 40% of them have retention programs. So the problem is that they'll get individuals in the door of various backgrounds, but then they're not sitting at the table where decisions are being reached. They're entry level. So we've got our numbers up, so it looks better when we do that report, but then the people that are making the decisions all look the same. Help us. So we've already graduated. We've graduated. We've got 5 years experience. We're at a corporation. Now we're stuck. And this is for anybody in the room, regardless of their background. What do you do? How do you advance?
If we are hemorrhaging people, especially people who would make up a board that would have valuable opinions about diversity and inclusiveness, we need to be looking at our organization and saying, what are we doing wrong where we can't keep people for a period of time? I almost guarantee that it's a matter of comfort. That is why we are having an inability to keep those voices ever present within our organization. I believe that requires a lot of inward reflection.
Yeah, this happened with the, what was it, the Oscars last year? When they didn't have any movie actors of color represented, right? They just walked away from the Oscars. It happened also in France where they had a festival of the graphic novels and no women were part of the panels and they just walked away as well. So you can do that.
As in a workplace situation, obviously, if you're managing a diverse workforce and you understand what you're doing, what are some of the things that you've done when there are disagreements among workers based on diversity and inclusion? If you've had those kinds of experiences to try and bring people closer together rather than further apart, call them teachable moments, whatever you want to call them, but how do you manage it's easier to manage a homogeneous situation, right? Everybody thinks the same. It's not great in other ways, but you might have some challenges that come up because of diversity and inclusion from a management point of view. How do you deal with that from a positive point of view?
Well, I think it takes conversations, and we deal a lot with a variety of clients. One of our clients is the Boy Scouts of America, and they wanted to make sure that diversity actually wasn't part of the topic when it came to some of the commercials that we were shooting. So we worked with them and walked through a plan of action that would allow us to get to a good place of inclusion from a script writing standpoint and from a talent standpoint. That was a conversation that we were very open about. That said, we also have clients who don't start that conversation of diversity, and we are more than comfortable to start it for them, to talk through when it comes to the talent that are part of the commercials or the actors or the language that we utilize, that diversity is a part of it. So I think really it just comes down to speaking up, whether the situation is negative or positive, making sure that in some way, shape, or form there can be an advocate for diversity in the room or at the business.
I mean, I think it starts having having a conversation. And if I feel that I'm not the best person to be helping me bring that conversation, then I might need to bring somebody else to help me facilitate. Because at the end of the day, we need to work. We will have to set and work through whatever our differences might be. And help lay a foundation. It might be a better sense of understanding where I'm coming from, where they're coming from, and laying out some teachable and teachable moments for both of us, or for three of us, or whoever might be leading that conversation.
When I have students, sometimes it happens, not very often. If I have students who are biased, I talk to them. I have a conversation in my office and talk to them about the importance of being open-minded, and diversity is very precious, and it's you learn from diversity actually, and the world would be very boring if we were all the same. So I do take the time to talk to that person.
I would just say, this is just from an employer standpoint, when I was dealing with a boss who maybe had not dealt with someone of another color or another race or another background, it was taking the time to make him aware of that, and then us coming to an understanding that we have to listen to each other and we have to hear each other as well. So the first time I say it, you might not hear it the way that I said it, but let's try again, and having the patience to do that both ways.
How important is having a mentor in the workplace? And how do you pick out the people who you want to trust?
It's significant. I mean, if you don't have a mentor, you don't have a guidepost. And I think a mentor is wholly important for any level of your career. The mentor doesn't have to be at the place that you work either. In fact, a mentor doesn't even have to be in your industry, but having a mentor is significant. And just pick them from the standpoint of experience, from the standpoint of connectivity, make sure you do have a mentor. And the mentor, hey, from a diversity standpoint, they don't have to be just like you. They can be different. For me, they can be a woman. They can be a person of color. Definitely don't feel like your mentor has to be just like you.
I always view mentorships as sort of like dating. There has to be that cosmic chemistry there. Don't just look for someone whose resume and CV looks like something you want to emulate or is someone that's going to catapult you to the furthest reaches of your careers. If you don't have that chemistry, the relationship's not going anywhere. It doesn't have to be someone just like you. It doesn't have to be someone within your organization. It needs to be a good gut feeling. But mentorship is almost necessary for you to reach the level that you want to reach.
I do not have any mentors, I'm sorry, but in my work, my workplaces, I think maybe college is important, but I have colleagues, more colleagues and communication among colleagues, peer communication, but I do not have a mentor. And I don't feel the need to have one. I'm just having more dialogues and communication.
Miss Worth was definitely my mentor when I was in college, and I would say find someone while you're here that you can connect with that can help propel you not only in your career and as you become a professional, but also while you are still a college student, because life happens and it gets crazy. So you need someone to be that backbone of support in all areas. And I would say even as you continue on into your career, make sure you maintain connections, conversations with them, ask questions.
I think having a mentor is really up to the individual whether they choose to have one, but I think it is important if you have one. But the also is to make sure that mentor knows that they're your mentor. Mentoring is a relationship, and they need to know that they're willing to offer you guidance and support and are there for you when you're just want to talk about whatever's occurring. I used to think I didn't have mentors, but then I started realizing, you know what, I had some very good mentors that opened up a lot of doors for me, and they weren't male. One of my mentors was very influential, was actually a female who I can rely on to this day, and I can continues to offer guidance and support. It supported me all along. But I also look at developing individuals, and that mentor is really more of a sponsor now. You know, because I look at it as mentor is going to help me along. But when something, the sponsor is going to say when there's an opportunity that nobody knows about or experience, or they're going to toss my name out before I even know it. They go to someone and say they're going to be your strongest advocate. So in either way, make sure that other individual knows, because you just can't go. I wouldn't go up to John and say, "Can you be my mentor today?" or call her a mentor if we didn't have some kind of relationship there.
Okay, so I think it's time coming to a close. Is there anything that you would like to leave with this audience as it relates to diversity and inclusion in the workplace? Panel?
Do something. Just don't leave here being quiet about it. Participate in an organization. Share share ideas and insights on social. Just do something about how, if you want diversity and inclusion to progress, you need to be part of that progression.
Keep coming to events like this and keep encouraging UT to hold events like this.
Yeah, be active. Raise your voice. Be active. Don't sit there and just do nothing.
Join Diversity Student Leader Society in the College of Communications and Information. Conversations like this happen all the time.
All of these things and continue educating others.
I want to thank our moderator, Annazette Houston, for doing a great job. And our distinguished panel member, Josh Loebner, Josh Cunningham, Florence Abad Turner, Jondra Darden, our Frank Cuevas. Ladies and gentlemen, again, we have one more session, and it's going to be diversity inclusion. Again, we're focused on the workplace, intergenerational, in 10 or 12 minutes. Next, I would like to invite you, our culminating activity tonight is our Diversity Festival. It will start from 5 to 7. We have all the different clubs and programs in the college that are, will have a lot of type of activities. We have cultural performance, deans, directors, hamburgers, hot dogs, veggie burgers, baked beans, you got it. In addition to that, free pictures, but ladies and gentlemen, I want to just call, because we have our logo. It has a hand on it and the world. You are moving to the global workplace, and outside reach are imprints. Many people have made imprints on your lives, from your family members to your professors to whomever. So take all of this and continue to make this world a better place. Thank you so much.